think my biggest drive in all of this is just like seeing each meeting is like the potential to a new story. I mean, basically each meeting is a new story, and that's basically good enough for me, you know. I just love hearing what people have to say, and like, you know, so far no one has had the same story as someone before them about how they came into neon, why they've chosen to work with that medium. And yeah, it's like none of these experiences have been the same for me, and that's enough to just keep me going.
Neon lights, I'm baffled. Pick it apart like samples. Give me all I can handle. Light me up like a candle. I'm taming lightning. Percy got that lightning. Plasma in my veins.
Welcome back, and welcome to the Taming Lightning podcast. I'm Percy Eccles II, your host for Taming Lightning, as well as the independent plasma light technician at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, where I'm researching and developing a space for exploring plasma and neon light art, a process requiring the technical and artistic expressions of glass blowing with the alchemical and scientific application of electrified gases and specialized equipment that you would also find used in neon. Self-study in this field has led me to a growing network of experts and institutions that allow for these conversations with artists, makers, and experts related to plasma, neon, glass, and beyond. Through these conversations, I hope to expand our understanding of plasma and neon light, looking beyond its associations with novelty in sign making, and to explore the potential for noble gases as an artistic medium, and of course, have fun making and sharing what I learn along the way. Hello, podcast listeners. Before we begin today's episode, I want to thank everyone for their support for Taming Lightning, especially those who are supporting me through Patreon. They help cut the cost of hosting the podcast, and for their contributions, receive some additional benefits. 2 new patrons have donated on Patreon, both qualifying for the personal shout-out on the podcast. Thank you, Ben Orozco, for your feedback and collaboration on the Intro to Plasma series, and thank you, Harriet Swartzrock, for your support and inspiration. Since both have been previous guests and have offered one-time donations through Ko-fi, each patron will receive a Patreon token added to their listing on the Taming Lightning page of patrons, where I try to include everyone that has supported Taming Lightning, be it donations on Ko-fi, guesting on the podcast, small fundraisers, and even gifts, be it supplies, equipment, and or services. And if you've been following the blog, I've been updating and adding new additions from the Intro to Plasma series, pulling out sections of the video podcast, expanding, and even better visuals, all repackaged for quick and easy access. To have download privileges and comment in document, join our Tip Squad, aka Together in Progress, on Patreon at www.patreon.com/taminglightning. Hello, Lightning Tamers. This is episode number 43. In today's podcast, recorded July 13th, 2020, I'll be joined by Marta Beltowska of In the Form of Neon. Marta Beltowska lives in Stockholm, Sweden, and works as a video and streaming producer at a nonprofit foundation called TRR. She graduated with a bachelor's in photography in 2014 at the University of Southampton in England and started her career as a photography assistant before moving to Sweden. After a creative block post-university, Marta found that local neon signs became her new subject of curiosity, and what began as a hobby has now turned into almost obsessive passion. Since 2018, she has made short documentaries called In the Form of Neon about artists who create neon signs. Welcome to the podcast, Marta. Give us a little bit of your background, what you do right now, and a little bit about your project, In the Form of Neon.
My background is in photography. That's sort of how I started out, both what I studied at university and then I did a stint as a photographer's assistant in England and in London, where I lived post-university. But then, as I think people might experience when they live in any large city. Being freelance is difficult, and as well as trying to keep up with paying your rent and all of that. So I eventually got a part-time job as a AV technician at an arts university, and that's sort of where I started to get more involved in video and live broadcasting and just like audio-visual technology in general. So I did that for like 3 or 4 years, and it ended up becoming my full-time job simply because I loved the variety of it. And at the same time, or like a couple of years down that road, I started this in the form of neon, sort of like a reflection or reaction of both a creative block and homesickness that I felt when I moved to London. So I mean, it sounds cheesy, but I was looking for something that would sort of grasp my attention in terms of starting a new photographic project, and there was this massive blue neon sign at a local cinema just around the corner from where I lived. And it caught my attention. It just looked so photogenic to me, and it reminded me of like when I was a kid and we would go into Stockholm at night during like the really dark winter months. The streets would just be like lit up by all of these massive neon signs that unfortunately a lot of them are not around anymore in the city. So basically that one sign in East London is what set me off on this project, where I just like started searching and documenting any sign that I came across. And then I did that for like a year or two until I started thinking more and more about like the people who actually create the signs. Because I always thought it was quite interesting, this like cultural idea or almost like a stereotype that people have surrounding neon and that type of neon signage. I think a lot of people will think that it's like almost a bit kitsch, that it's very commercial, but nowadays commercial things are often things that are mass produced, and neon sign is like almost the one thing that you can't mass produce because someone has to make it with their own bare hands.
Right.
And so I just started knocking on doors, calling people, emailing people that I found work with neon, and I was faced with a lot of closed doors until I connected with Tommy here in Sweden, who is like the one neon bender in the whole of Scandinavia. And I'm really thankful to him because he's basically opened so many doors for me in terms of connecting with people and like connecting with you, for example. And so, I started reaching out to people if I went on like a trip to the States, where my sister happens to live as well. And just tried meeting up with as many people as possible and asking them like, why neon, what it matters to them, what they think about like the whole thing about neon versus LED or LED. And it's just sort of that curiosity and, I don't know, fascination with the medium that has led me to creating these like video interviews with people. And I don't have like a natural segue to this, but now I work as like a broadcast technician. So it's a little bit of a step up from being an AV technician, but I have that part of, working with video in my day-to-day job as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just try and make these like video shorts or like small documentaries when I have the time.
Yeah, even the most recent one you have shared with us with Ben Orozco's exhibition at the glass factory, Utah. That was really awesome. I was curious about Ben's work because I had kind of an inkling about what he was going for, but in the end, it was something completely in the realm what he was thinking about, but also it had some surprises for me. Has there been, as you've been doing more of these documentaries, and you can comment on, filming Ben's exhibition and doing that short for him, what are there things that you have learned in this process that you may not have learned any other way?
I think, to me, the process of creating neon is so filled with science and, understanding these different reactions that happen. And I personally have never been blessed with the understanding, a very good understanding of maths or science or anything like that. So I'm just completely in awe of that, you yourself included, and Ben and anyone who works with this sort of thing manages to not just control it and make what you want to make of it, but that you can make art as well. Because I have sort of learned through this process that there are some people who make neon art, but they aren't the people who actually bend the neon themselves. So, you can both be a neon artist and fabricator, but then there are also artists that aren't fabricators. So yeah, there's just the whole, almost the, sorry, I'm sort of missing the word now, the danger of it. Because obviously you're bending over an open flame, and then depending on the bombarding process, you're dealing with high voltage as well, and there's basically so much that could go wrong, not just for the artwork but also for your own personal safety, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
That's really been an eye-opener to me. And then I also have to just comment on from having made a few of these shorts now with different people, is just the massive difference in background everyone has. Though I think the conclusion I can sort of make so far, at least, is that everyone seems to have not, no one has gone in thinking, okay, I'm going to work with neon. People have been illustrators or graphic designers, or worked in real estate or just something completely different, and then they've somehow managed to find their way into creating neon, and that has in a way taken over their life. So yeah, that's, I don't know, it's that kind of pull of bending neon is interesting to me.
Yeah, I constantly am learning about, through the podcast itself, I'm learning about people and how they acquired, the skills or information that allows them to do the things they do, whether it's neon or plasma. And you start to find, even after just a couple of these interviews, the connecting thread is that everyone came from a very similar place. They were struck by some form of light, and they were looking and following whatever that was, and it happens to be that neon was the closest thing to them. Some people jump from maybe LED into neon, or from lasers to neon to plasma, like what Wayne has been doing. Are there still some videos on your backlog? I know you've been able to get like a few more before the
Yes.
pandemic. That's exciting.
Yes, so I still have Ed Kirshner's video to finish because of Ben's exhibition opening just the other month. I sort of had to prioritize finishing his so that the glass factory in Boda can use that material as well to, I mean, both show his exhibition, but just like help them advertise the work that they do in general as well. So now that I'm on holiday from work during the summer, I'm gonna focus on finishing Ed's video.
Nice. Has there been some people on your list that you are hoping to be able to work with in the future?
Ooh, do you want me to drop some names?
Whatever you feel comfortable, you can answer in one way or another.
Well, I think I can probably easily mention Tommy, and he knows this as well. It's mostly been a time factor why I haven't actually sat down and done anything with him yet. Though I have visited his studio a few times and done some filming, but it's not anything that's sort of near completion.
Right.
And I don't want to jump him. I don't know when this podcast will come out, but I'm planning to see if maybe we can meet up and do an interview now during the summer months, when hopefully we both have the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, otherwise I had planned to, before everything with the pandemic happened, I did have a trip planned for the West Coast. So I had planned to go there and meet some people in San Francisco and LA. But
there's
that
a lot of
obviously,
it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like, planning a trip to like a candy store. Like it's almost like you can just pick and choose who to contact. And yeah, like the people that I've contacted have been really open and friendly, but for obvious reasons, that whole thing has to be postponed now. So we'll see when that happens. But otherwise, I have had some thoughts of trying to find more people who are based in Europe. I know there are some like neon shops in Poland, for example, and my family is from Poland, so it would also be a good excuse for me to practice my Polish. But yeah, it would just be great to meet as many people as possible and sort of see where these neon shops pop up.
What are some of the challenges of traveling for a project like this that you have experienced, and how have you overcome those when returning?
Ooh, I would have to say the carrying equipment is probably the biggest challenge, like the whole logistics of it. Because I want to make sure that I have everything I need, but I also can't travel too heavy. So it's always a fine balance between that. And so I've tried to sort of overcome that by just, being as smart as I can, or trying to be as smart as I can with the equipment that I use. Be it like, a camera that does enough things so that I don't have to have like an external recorder or stuff like that. Small but strong lights, though that's always like a compromise as well. And I'm fortunate enough that I have a partner who's willing to help me lug this equipment around and also sort of be my production assistant when I do these things, at least outside of Sweden. So yeah, it's logistics is difficult.
Yeah.
And also, just making plans with people and making sure that you can find a time that suits both sides. Yeah, so I try to be as accommodating and sort of as flexible as possible without, compromising too much on what it is that I want to get out of this. Because, obviously there's a motivation for me to create these video shorts, but at the same time, I would just hate to create something that the person involved, doesn't want to be a part of, or wouldn't want anyone else to see it. Yeah. So I don't want to waste anyone's time.
Yeah, that's always, that's just part of your professionalism. You have a standard, and you want to meet that standard, and then if you can push beyond that. What is it that keeps you running on this project? Because a lot of people, including myself, we're always, we want to do this thing. We have this dream. We have a passion. We have a drive. And there are walls that are hit when we continue to pursue this. What drives you to continue?
I think my biggest drive in all of this is just seeing each meeting is the potential to a new story. Basically each meeting is a new story, and that's basically good enough for me. I just love hearing what people have to say, and so far no one has had the same story as someone before them about how they came into neon, why they've chosen to work with that medium. And yeah, it's none of these experiences have been the same for me, and that's enough to just keep me going. And also just seeing how, at least so far, people have been so happy to see the finished interview. That has to be the biggest joy of making this, of sharing the art of neon, but also sharing this individual's work and their story.
Yeah. And then of course you got to make sure you take care of yourself, and you find moments to decompress. But what are some of the favorite things that you do to relax?
Ooh, I think maybe a lot of people will recognize themselves in this, but I love to just relax with a good show on Netflix or something like that. I sometimes feel a bit guilty, binge watching shows, but at the same time, if I see a camera movement or something else visually that inspires me, I sort of always note it down on my phone, just because I love learning that way. So that's sort of my excuse for consuming popular culture, is that I'm actually studying or researching at the same time. Yeah, I think I would have to say that just I relax the best with a good show or a good film.
Yeah. In a similar way, I find the same thing, whether I'm listening to a podcast, and most recently, I'm jumping on, YouTube quite a bit, and I'm searching a lot of different topics, and between different presentations, even both film and video, and how they treat their audio, or at least how they interact with the guest, or how they ask certain questions, or how they lead on the story of the interaction. I found that's also something I do myself to think about ways to enhance or to work through a conversation for my podcast.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's you can almost find these little inspirational bits or almost like tips. Just you could probably just find that people watching, like you see how other people interact with each other, or how someone tells a story through music or podcast, or for a TV show. So you can always learn from almost anything if you look for it.
Yeah, and from when you were filming at the glass factory with myself and Ed, the way that you work through the space, you have an idea of what's going on in that space, and you just kind of move into position. Is that often how you have to approach these things, because it's kind of a casual collaboration of sorts? Is that kind of how you have to approach these type of films for In the Form of Neon?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I always sort of try and have a chat with people beforehand, just to see if there are like any limitations, or the opposite, if there's anything in particular that they want there to be a focus on. And like with the plasma workshop that you and Ed conducted last year, for example, I felt it was like a good opportunity to sort of to lean towards that type of filmmaking. To lean towards that type of filmmaking, of just almost like being a fly on the wall, I suppose, because I wanted to document like the process and the students learning and what they were going through, but at the same time I didn't want to be in the way for like a critical moment, or to be standing in front of someone who was actually trying to learn from like one of yours or Ed's demonstrations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I mean, that question came up really quickly, because I was like, oh man, I didn't. Now thinking about how you move around the space, we did talk a little bit just to kind of figure out what your boundaries were, and you did mention fly on the wall tactic, and I don't think I really noticed you half the time. That was that's pretty stealthy.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I've picked up from my photo assisting days. You basically, you don't want to be noticed. That's sort of the attitude that I try to have even now. Like as a broadcast technician, I don't want to be noticed, because if I'm noticed, then it probably means that something went wrong. So if everything just, runs smoothly and perfectly, everyone will just be like, oh, that went so well. And no one will think about the technician behind the scenes.
Right. It's you don't want to be in a position where people, when they watch the film, notice that the person being filmed is noticing the camera.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've seen this video, and this is like a weird tangent, but it's called Glass India. So you can find it on YouTube. It's called Glass India. It's a film where some guy came up and he wanted to take a video of the workers in this glass factory in India. And I think it's a two-parter video. And many of them had never really seen a video camera, or were intrigued by people filming. And so everyone that was filmed was staring at the camera the entire time. And what makes that even more like intense is that as they were staring at the camera, they were still working. And their pace had not changed, their behavior didn't change, other than the fact they were looking at you the whole time. And so you have a moment where someone's got a bit of glass on the pipe, they're spinning it out to make it long so the person can put it in the mold and blow it. And they just kind of like spin it and they toss it without looking at the person next to them. And the other person is still looking at the camera, catches it, goes on, does a thing, and it keeps moving through like clockwork. That's kind of like the thing that's
definitely giving that a watch as soon as we finish this call. I'm going to look at that.
Also, OSHA wouldn't like it either, but because like they don't have any shoes on, they're not respirators or anything like that. No, not even cloth over their faces as they're breaking up glass. But but it is an interesting video because that really sticks out quite a bit for a lot of people because just because that the behavior of staring directly at the camera, but also the efficiency not being changed whatsoever. But yeah, this is really good talk. Have you listened to the podcast all that much?
Yeah, no, I have given a couple of episodes a listen. And yeah, like you as well, like you managed to find such a variety of people and everyone has like a different relationship to neon or plasma. It's always great to hear.
And has there been anyone that that hasn't been shown on the podcast yet that you'd be interested in hearing from?
I mean, I think I would love to hear, and I really hope, I'm probably going to butcher her last name, but I would really love to hear Meryl Pataki, I think. She's the one who sort of leads She Bends. I mean, she has such a massive presence like in the neon community from where I'm sitting on social media, and yeah, it would be great to hear her on a podcast. And I know that they recently included some plasma artists as well in like the latest She Bends. So it would be interesting to hear about that too.
Nice. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it was. I'm glad we were able to get this to happen. Though unfortunate is that it happens during the pandemic. I do wish you the best of health, and not to drive yourself too crazy here as you, bounce between work and your own projects.
Yeah, and the same to you. I hope you stay safe, but that you still, manage to get some joy out of the work that you do.
Thank you for listening to the Taming Lightning podcast. Music credits to the following artists in order of appearance: Retro by One, Taming Lightning by Trav B. Ryan, Next Time by Haiku, and Walking by Roz Hobb. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm always curious about the different avenues that bring people to illuminated works of neon and plasma, and so I appreciate the work that Marta does to bring that to light. With the visual medium of neon and plasma, video is a very strong middle way to an in-person experience. So thank you, Marta, for taking the time on the podcast and for your support through your passion project in the form of neon. It was a pleasure to meet you back in 2019 at the Glass Factory Boda in Sweden, and it's very impressive how you can navigate the chaos of a workshop and organize them beautifully in audio and video. Please support In the Form of Neon by watching on martabeltowska.com and Vimeo. She has videos of the following artists, including myself, Ben Orozco, Ed Kirshner, Stephanie Lifshitz, and Cliff Edens. If you'd like to support Taming Lightning, subscribe on the newsletter on www.taminglightning.net or follow on Instagram at Taming Lightning. Other options for support are a one-time donation through Ko-fi, spelled ko-fi.com/taminglightning, or join me on Patreon for additional perks and benefits. I'll have links provided in the show notes. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. And as always, be safe, be healthy, and be strong, and I'll see you next year.